Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we are exploring a truly bizarre historical coincidence. Picture this. It's the 1970s, and two completely distinct, incredibly famous paranormal events kick off. They're separated by an entire ocean, yet wildly enough, they share the exact same name, Enfield. One is this horrifying outdoor encounter with a mutant beast in rural America, and the other, an intense, claustrophobic haunting in a British council house. So how on earth did two entirely unrelated communities named Enfield become the absolute epicenters of a global supernatural frenzy just 4 years apart? And more importantly, what do these overlapping timelines reveal about human psychology? Let's figure it out.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the two Enfields and their two very different mysteries. Then we'll unpack the Illinois Enfield Horror, before crossing the pond to look at the London Enfield poltergeist. After that, we'll dig into the media frenzy and social contagion surrounding both events, deconstruct the hoaxes and mass hysteria, and finally wrap up with the lasting legacy of Enfield.
All right, Section 1. Two Enfields, two mysteries, a transatlantic coincidence.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how perfectly it splits these two nightmares down the middle. On one hand, we've got Enfield, Illinois in 1973. This is a story about a physical, outdoor creature, what cryptozoologists would call a cryptid. We're talking muddy tracks, fired guns, the whole 9 yards. On the flip side, we have Enfield, London in 1977, which is a deeply psychological, indoor supernatural haunting completely centered around one family in their home. A mutant beast versus an invisible ghost. It's the exact same name, the same decade, but wildly different terrors.
Moving on to Section 2, the Illinois Enfield Horror, a creature feature in the Midwest. Picture this. It's a chilly night around 9:30 p.m. Local resident Henry McDaniel hears a scratching at his door. He opens it, probably thinking it's just a stray dog or maybe a bear, right? Well, instead, he is greeted by this absolutely terrifying sight. He described a grayish, slimy creature, standing about 4.5 feet tall. It had 3 legs, a short, stocky body, 2 little arms, and, get this, 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. McDaniel was terrified, naturally, but he wanted to protect his family, so he grabs his .20 pistol, throws open the door again, and fires 4 shots at the beast from literally 12 feet away. He was dead certain he hit it, but the creature didn't go down. It just hissed at him like a wildcat.
Things escalated incredibly fast from there. After McDaniel took those shots, he claimed this thing bounded 50 to 70 feet away in just 3 massive leaps. I mean, that's insane. And when state troopers actually showed up, they found physical evidence. There were strange dog-like prints in the mud, but these prints had 6 toe pads and clearly belonged to a 3-footed animal. Less than 2 weeks later, on May 6th, McDaniel spotted it again, just casually strolling down the railroad tracks. By May 8th, the entire town was swarming with armed posses. It got so crazy that 5 young hunters were actually arrested after they fired at some hairy beast they saw out in the brush.
It was absolute chaos. The White County Sheriff actually threatened to arrest Henry McDaniel if he didn't stop inciting a panic. But the cat was out of the bag, and the media was already swarming. You had Rick Rainbow, a news director for an Indiana radio station, rolling into town with a crew. They even claimed to have tape-recorded the monster's disturbing scream. Even the renowned cryptozoologist Loren Coleman showed up to investigate, and he noted hearing this piercing, ungodly shriek out in the brush. So you've got rural Illinois armed to the teeth hunting down a 3-legged monster. But what exactly was happening just 4 years later, all the way across the Atlantic? That brings us to Section 3, the London Enfield poltergeist, terror at 284 Green Street.
Inside this seemingly normal council house lived single mother Peggy Hodgson and her 4 children. The focus was mostly on 11-year-old Janet and 13-year-old Margaret. In August of 1977, they called the police, absolutely terrified. The anomalies they reported were straight out of a horror movie. We're talking heavy furniture sliding across the floor on its own, loud knocking echoing from inside the walls, toys being hurled across the room by unseen hands, and even reports of the children levitating. But honestly, the most disturbing part was this gruff, demonic voice coming from young Janet, claiming to be a former occupant of the house named Bill. And over the course of 18 months, these bizarre events were witnessed and reported by over 30 people, including actual police constables and seasoned journalists.
Now, as you can imagine, the experts who visited the house were sharply divided. On one side, we've got the believers.
This included Society for Psychical Research investigators Maurice Grosse and Guyline Playfair, plus the famous American demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren. They felt the phenomena were genuinely 100% supernatural. On the skeptic side, though, we have researchers like Anita Gregory and John Beloff, along with the American stage magician Milbourne Christopher. They failed to observe a single paranormal thing while they were there and strongly suspected the girls were just using clever tricks to fake the whole ordeal.
Which leads us to Section 4, Media Frenzy and Contagion, the Spread of Fear.
So the crucial point here is understanding this concept of social contagion. It's fascinating. Sociologists from Western Illinois University actually used the Illinois Enfield monster as a textbook case study for this exact phenomenon. You see, both the Illinois cryptid and the London poltergeist attracted massive tabloid coverage, hordes of thrill seekers, and intense local gossip. The researchers found that in Illinois, it was this potent mix of intense emotion and extreme suggestibility that caused the entire community to panic, even though, originally, there were only a tiny handful of actual first-hand accounts. The fear itself was incredibly contagious. It spread like wildfire.
Section 5, Hoaxes and Hysteria, Deconstructing the Myth.
Let's look at the cold, hard facts. Psychologist Chris French brilliantly broke down the evidence pointing to a hoax in the London haunting. First off, the sisters actually admitted to faking some of the activity to mess with journalists. Second, you know that famous terrifying photo of Janet supposedly levitating? Well, skeptics point out it looks exactly like a young gymnast just bouncing off her bed. Third, this supposed spirit of an old man had a really odd fixation on menstruation, which, let's be honest, makes a lot more sense as a prank played by young girls coming of age than the concerns of an elderly ghost. Investigators also caught Janet on video attempting to secretly bend spoons, and skeptics noted that the demonic Bill voice sounded exactly like false vocal cords being manipulated by a child.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the urge to prank perfectly mirrors our Illinois case. Remember the neighbor boy, Greg Garrett? He was the one who claimed the monster stepped on his foot and absolutely shredded his sneaker. Well, when sociologists later sat down to interview him and his family, Greg admitted he entirely concocted the whole story. He literally just wanted to tease his eccentric neighbor, Henry McDaniel, and pull a fast one on all the visiting newsmen.
Finally, Section 6, The Legacy of Enfield, Monsters of the Mind.
Ultimately, these two Enfields represent the two great overarching domains of human fear. The Illinois cryptid, that's our external fear. It's the fear of the dark woods, the wild unknown, the literal monsters lurking right outside our front door. The London poltergeist, however, represents our internal fear, the deeply psychological dread of our own safe spaces turning against us, the chaotic energy of adolescence, and the terror of losing control of our own bodies. Yet, despite being so different, both events were driven by the exact same mechanisms: human attention-seeking behavior, wild media sensationalism, and the unbelievable power of suggestion.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. When we look back at the hissing mutants and the levitating girls of the 1970s, are the true monsters in these stories actually human imagination and the power of suggestion? Next time you hear a bump in the night, maybe take a second to ask yourself what you really expect to see when you open that door. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you found it as absolutely fascinating to unpack as I did to share. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I will see you next time.